We've seen a couple of asyms rise and fall over the last few years, but it seems nothing can truly contend with Dead by Daylight as the sole monopoly over the asym genre. Why is that? Hey peeps, this is Kiza, and we're going to talk about why seemingly nobody but Dead by Daylight, despite how stumbling behavior is, can succeed in the genre. So, there are multiple aspects why every game so far has failed. I think the highlights of the first point is VHS and TCM. Complete failure to iterate on player feedback. VHS was a game that was very hard to get into as the monster, the killer, the one in the 1v4 role. And nothing was done for that until the point where the game had 40 players. And at that point, it was too late. People got super fixated on the toxic positivity aspect of, don't complain about the game, you're not, this is not DBD, stop complaining, stop complaining, stop complaining. And the devs never really got around to fixing some of the core issues that the game had, especially for new player onboarding, and it was all kind of shrugged away until later, and the later never came. The game just shut down, and the plug was pulled. So, yeah. Simple failure. Complete and utter failure. Same thing is happening to TCM right now, almost. But in a different sense, a way where Gun Media is not... They're not ignoring player feedback. They are not reading it. They are dismissing it actively and being shitheads. Like, I have not seen something like this ever. Like, in my life. I've, like, a few times I've seen this as, like, specific behavior dev comments on streams of their own where they get pissy or where 50 people, like, spam questions to them. But Gun Media, especially, like, for a community manager, I don't even want to name names, but I think everyone knows at this point because they're very public about it. Super hostile, super dismissive, super babyish about everything. And I get it. There are a lot of shitheads in the games community, be it Dead by Daylight, be it VHS, be it TCM, etc, yada yada yada. But the colossal just ego that has been on display and just unprofessional behavior is insane to me. Yeah, I get it. People can be assholes. But it doesn't mean that you, as a company, as a corporate person, get to behave like a child to them back. That's not how you're supposed to work. You're supposed to be remotely professional. But Gun Media apparently doesn't know that. And it takes them forever to iterate on their feedback, like even when they do recognize it. Which, Jesus Christ. Have you seen that gigantic ad banner that was on the game for 5 trillion years that took them like forever to adjust? Which is like, it's not a long job to adjust the UI element to be slightly smaller. It's not a long one. But hey, if it means more people will buy our shit, then it's all cool. So that is the first pillar on why most asyms fail. And you may say, well, behavior does that too. Yes, but they've had a little bit more time to recognize some of the more basic player feedback, so it hasn't been to this big of a scale. It's currently a lot more impactful on asyms to get player feedback done right very early, because behavior didn't have anything to contend with during their super bad years of DBD when they very slowly address player feedback. But currently, you need to be rapid, you need to be concise with your changes, you need to be super efficient with it. Which not only is not what's happening with games like TCM and VHS, the absolute reverse is happening with TCM, where it's just negative player feedback engagement, which is crazy to me. Complete failure on the community manager team. Besides that, the second core pillar is drip feeding content, etc, etc. While I will maintain that the 3-month release schedule for Dead by Daylight is one of the core failings of the game, and why it's so buggy, why there are so many issues with balancing, why it's just generally so unstable and changes don't come in fast enough, parts of the game aren't updated for years. Still, I cannot deny it's an effective monitoring tool, which is sad because it incentivizes really bad behavior from behavior, no pun intended. But our asyms seem not just not following that model, they seem to just decide to, yeah, we're never gonna release content until like forever later, which I get for smaller teams. But guys, if you're not ready to have like immediate, like soon after launch content in the backlog that is like already almost done, here's a sneak peek. You are going to die. And your new game, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is going to have less players than Friday the 13th in a year after its release. And Friday the 13th was not a very good game. Put that into your perspective. I don't understand how people will think, oh yeah, we're going to release a live service game, and then we're going to very slowly add patches to it, and then we're also going to release content every forever. And it's not going to be super big content. I understand that constant rushing and crunching like behavior that does to release this killer and the survivor and potentially 2 survivors every 3 months is unsustainable and is crazy and is hurting your game a lot. But if you're going to come into the asym space swinging, you need content ready. And my only guess why people don't come in and then have content ready is because they're out of money, which is clear by TCM's pricing. Nice one, guys. $10 DLCs per character that you might not be able to play. Great. And the third and last point is gameplay. And I'm gonna say, yes, that seems like a very blanket statement, but here's my thoughts. Every single game that has come out in the asym space that has tried to compete with Dead by Daylight has tried to change the formula. They've tried to fix the formula, while the formula is not the problem. In my opinion, there is nothing inherently that broken about Dead by Daylight. Okay, yes, Dead by Daylight is very broken, but I think its very core, perkless Trapper versus perkless Survivors, is mostly fine when you don't push it to extreme skill levels. I think an average skilled Trapper with no perks versus a very average solo queue team, I think it's a fine balance. Is it the perfect one? Hell no. But I don't think the core or idea of Dead by Daylight is that fucked, and I don't think anything radical needs to change with it. The reason why VHS was so hard to get into and why it ultimately failed is because teams being able to attack the monster and just kill it was very hard on new monster players. And while ultimately, if you got really good, monster could stomp people, it was still very stressful. The 1-4 in the 1v4 is already inherently stressful, and if you can get killed, holy shit, you're gonna fucking hate yourself. And that's what people did, and that's why a lot of people just didn't play VHS in the end, unless they were playing teens, and too long queues, and yada yada yada. In TCM, there's pretty much no skill ceiling to think of, because they went for a roleplay type of gameplay, pretty much no interactivity, and there is nothing to get good at, and there's just the progression system that this kind of sucks, and what results is people just don't see the point of playing. Content creators like Scott Junt just quit the game after a week because they had nothing else to do. Because people play games for the gameplay, and yeah, okay, there's only so many times you can run around the panel and it'll be fun, but there's actually a skill component there, and it's random, etc. There's so many things overlapping, thinking it could be different, while in TCM it is just plain boring. Same goes for all the other reasons, like Evil Dead. Okay, yeah, there was some gameplay loop to get good at, but fundamentally, what works in the asym space right now, that has been explored, that has been proven to work, is the Dead by Daylight formula. And I don't understand why people who want to contend in this new space want to change it. I get it if you're like a developer who wants to do something very original, but I think if you want to make a good game, copy Dead by Daylight. Don't copy all of its flaws. Don't copy its early code base being made of blueprints. Don't code the spaghetti. Don't copy all of that. But fundamentally, running around pallets, vaulting windows, and looping things and spinning killers. That is fun. That is actually fun. And that is the thing you can get good at. A lot of the systems Dead by Daylight are flawed, but its core idea is very good. And that's why it's been able to succeed so much. Because no matter how much behavior fucks it up, the core idea is so good and they've struck so much gold, even though they're really terrible at capitalizing on it. They still just reign supreme because nobody has the guts to copy their idea. So here are my 3 small tips to anyone who wants to break into the asym space. First up, you're going to need to copy Dead by Daylight. Do a carbon copy of Dead by Daylight's core ideas. Is don't look into perks too much, don't look into killer powers too much, but the core idea of running around things, dropping things, vaulting windows, stuff like that. Random generation too, but don't make it too obscene. And that way you have a solid-ish foundation to work off. Number 2, you are going to need to have content ready. Something like a new killer, a new map, all of that should be ready to go in a couple of months, and then also another one and a couple of months later. You are going to need momentum. The last thing is, once the game releases, things you thought were fine, or things you thought were underpowered, or things you didn't think were overpowered, they are all going to explode violently, and you have a process ready to super rapidly iterate on game design. And another thing, don't just look solely at the stats, because that way you will fail pretty miserably. Like behavior has been with balancing, seeing what shit. You need to understand, you need to deep dive into everything everyone says, and have people who play your game religiously and understand it far better than you do from a game like player perspective, and you need to get into their heads and excavate all of the feedback from them. It may not be perfect, but you need to understand the core issues of why this gameplay scenario is fucked, and etc. And rapidly, and I do mean rapidly, go and touch upon the scenarios, because otherwise you will fail, people will leave immediately. You also probably should launch on Game Pass like TCM, have an early boost and more feedback. Also, ideally, your server shouldn't die. None of the games have so far succeeded on, honestly, any of these criteria at all. We haven't seen a singular game meet one of the 3 criteria that is set for a successful asym game to come out. And I'm not really sure why that is. Maybe it's just people don't understand what Dead by Daylight does to do it successful. People just think, oh, it's horror, let's make it horror 1v4, and that will just be good. No, it's very tricky, and it's very difficult. But the suggestion is just do what works, and just don't get sued, Lamau. That is my official suggestion. If you wanna reinvent the hammer, reinvent the wheel, reinvent everything, you're probably going to fail. Instead, there's one right there. Take everything that's good, take out everything that's bad, rethink it a little, not too much, get ready for release, and hope for the best. And honestly, if somebody offered up just a better Dead by Daylight that is slightly more polished and did things a little bit better, I wholeheartedly would jump ship immediately. And I think a lot of people would as well. And I think a lot of people who stop playing Dead by Daylight will come over as well. People underestimate the potential of how much people yearn for just a better Dead by Daylight. I mean, behavior, at least even Dead by Daylight 2.0, people would flock to that as well. Look at Dead by Daylight, people, and copy it. It is, at its very core, there is a good game in there. And that is why Dead by Daylight is still alive to this point. Bye, peeps. I'll see you next time.